Hey everybody! Sorry about the delay getting started. That's where I'm going to start. So it's both Ian and I had a challenge logging in. I think others did as well, but it sounds like people are slowly logging in. So really appreciate that. So really excited about tonight's event, and thank you all so much for joining. This is our second virtual London Flying Club meetup, and there are a lot of new names on this registration list, so that's awesome. Thanks for joining, and thanks for finding the event and listening to me gargle on. I'm not sure if Ian has much to say. He said earlier that he's lost for words, but I don't think that's true. You see him in the bottom corner. So a bunch of new people on, which is really awesome. So if you haven't been to a London Flying Club event before, then the way they normally work is we meet in a swanky central London venue. There's a round of drinks and some canapes. You hear from somebody in the industry in general aviation who's at the top of their game. And you get a chance really to have a beer with fellow aviators, connect with people flying different machines at different aero clubs, doing different kinds of missions in their aircraft, and just generally get your aviation fix midweek. So try to keep that spirit going and do these virtual sessions midweek. And so if you haven't grabbed a pint, then you should. So cheers. You got your cup of water. That's okay too. Doesn't always have to be alcohol. That's a non-alcoholic punk IPA. But as an aside, I found out that there is there was just a few hours ago an event out of Germany that was 49 euros, which was also just a couple of people talking into a webcam. This event is free, but the London Flying Club accepts all donations. So if you click there's a button, call to action at the bottom if you want to donate something, helps with the running costs for the club. Normally, it's the credit card of yours truly that buys the first round of drinks, and I'd like to spread the cost between everybody when they come. So some of you are generous givers, and I appreciate it greatly. If you do want to donate and keep the club running, then my wife will thank you for a very long time. So if you're new to this platform, once you're actually able to log in, then you guys have figured out the chat here on the right. That's an easy way to throw some questions up. If you do want to ask a more formal question, there's a button underneath our screens to ask a question. You can just type it in there, and then an alert will pop up for Ian and I, and we'll be able to address it, no problem. So I want this to be interactive. It's not me interviewing Ian. It's very much as collaborative with all of you guys as we can make it. So Ian, publisher and managing director of Flyer Magazine, you guys should all be subscribers. But if you are thinking about subscribing in the course of the next hour, don't. Because Ian has promised there's some big news coming out of Flyer tomorrow. And he says that if you subscribe in the next hour, you'll be disappointed tomorrow. I don't know what it is. He won't tell me. He says he won't tell us tonight, but it's going to be big news. So don't subscribe tonight. Contrary to all.
I've actually switched the subscription window off anyway for tonight, because I was really trying to get everything ready for tonight, but there was a couple of the small ducks that refused to get into line, and so we've got to get those into line.
Ready to hear what it is when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't suppose there's any easy way I can talk. You mentioned that 49 euro live cast in Germany a little while ago, which was aviation based, I have to say, by my good friend Thomas from Flieger magazine. I took a screen grab, but there's no easy way of showing that to you, I don't think. But he got dressed up in like a survival suit and everything for his. So maybe there's a thing in Germany about getting dressed up in rubber and selling. 49 euro. Yeah, frankly, no one's going to pay for either of us dressed up in rubber.
No, nobody wants to dream of that either.
No. Get out the mind bleach.
So we're going to start this session again. Hey, so Ian, welcome. Thanks for giving up an hour of your evening, and really appreciate it. We're really excited to hear the stories you have to share. And in my mind, I've thought about a couple questions for you along the lines of what you've done with Flyer Magazine and how you see that going, and we'll get to that in a little bit. How about you tell us how you got into aviation in the first place?
Wow. I mean, if I go right back to the beginning, I suppose when I was a little kid, maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9 or something like that, I used to cycle to the local park where they had a whole load of radio controlled models that would meet on a Sunday afternoon. I never had a radio controlled model or anything, but I remember looking at those and thinking, yeah, absolutely, really want to do that one day. And it kind of happened as a result of that. I got to a company I used to work for had a excuse me, let me just close down some stuff there. Sorry, a company I used to work for had a summer party weekend on Jersey a gazillion years ago. I must have been 30, 40 years younger than I am now, sadly. And I remember going along, and we had a free afternoon. So I went to Jersey Aero Club at the time and booked a flight in a Chipmunk just for the sake of it, and went over and did a couple of aeros over the sea and had a really good flight in the Chipmunk. And that was it. I'd started my journey and then got my PPL and everything else like that. And at the time I was working in publishing and computer magazine publishing, really. And clearly you kind of look around and go, oh, these aviation magazines are quite good. And back in the day, I remember I spoke to the people who owned Flyer at the time, and I also spoke to a guy called James Gilbert who owned Pilot. And I approached both of them and said, would you like to sell your magazine? And James, who sadly has passed away a while ago now, and who became a really good friend, James said, my dear chap, come up to London. Let's have lunch at the Groucho Club. So we went and had lunch. And
that was fancy enough for you to want to get in the game.
That was it. I thought that was what aviation publishing was all about then. Clearly, I was misled. And anyway, I won't bore you with the details, but maybe a year and a half after that, an opportunity came around to buy Flyer magazine, which I bought. It might not have been a year and a half. Anyway, at some stage after that. So I bought Flyer magazine. That was back in 1994. The contract was signed on the 21st of March. So that was 26 years ago in a week or something like that. So,
wow. And at that time, it was just the magazine.
At the time, it was just, well, actually, no. So I remember buying the magazine, and Flyer was based up in Scotland at the time. And when you buy a magazine, you really buy the right to publish it. There's not usually a huge amount of stock. But with the magazine arrived a kind of transit van full of sweatshirts in a gazillion different sizes and all sorts of really strange designs and stuff like that. So we ended up going to what was at the time the Microlight show at Telford, and selling off the sweatshirts. And also there's a flight. Clearly there are 2 flight guides in the UK, AFE and Poolies. And at the time there was only really Poolies, and the people who published Flyer magazine at the time had decided to do their own flight guide. So we kind of inherited the Flyer flight guide. There was only 4 of us at the beginning, and we quickly realized that publishing a magazine, setting up a company and doing everything else you have to do didn't really give you time to do the flight guide. So I ended up selling the flight guide weeks after I bought the magazine to Jeremy Pratt of AFE, who turned it into the AFE flight guide, which is, I have to say, a significantly better product than we would have ever produced back then.
Yeah.
So I think we got that 3.5-inch floppy disk or something.
Come again?
I think we got all those sweatshirts, a flight guide, and a 3.5-inch floppy disk with whatever work in progress there was.
That's what you bought.
That's what I bought. Yeah.
So I recently embarked on my own entrepreneurial journey.
Congratulations.
And big question. Come again?
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's cool. I love it. And but a big question that I get is often around like how do you structure your entry on a financing side? People often struggle to take that first jump in. So if I guess I should have asked before you said what you actually bought, but how did the financing or how did the structure of it come together for you to like, where did you start, to say, hey, I'm going to buy Flyer. Like, how do I value a company that already exists, and How do I put an offer on?
So I was working for another company at the time, a company called Future Publishing, which has just become the biggest magazine publisher in the UK, funnily enough, with its recent acquisition. But at the time, it was a very small company, and I was actually working for them, and I bought Flyer on behalf of Future Publishing, and then some things changed at Future, and a month later, I bought Flyer from Future Publishing, and the original deal had been let's split it 50-50 and have a joint venture, but 50-50s are quite tough, and we couldn't really work out who could do what without telling whom, etc., etc. And so in the end, I just went to the bank and borrowed the rest of the money and bought it all. And it was all fairly amicable and painless and everything, so it was good. And if anyone out there happens to watch TED Talks at all, TED's founded by a guy called Chris Anderson, who was my boss at Future Publishing. That's who I bought Flyer from after having bought it for him for a month before that.
Oh, nice. Well, he also went on to do great things then.
He went on to do significantly greater things than I've gone on to do. But I bet I've had a lot more fun.
I bet. I haven't heard any TED Talks from people talking about general aviation yet.
No, me neither. I'm not sure there. Well, there's been a few drones and a few other bits and pieces. So
yeah. So in those early days, was it just you?
Sorry.
In those early days, did you when you took over the entirety of Flyer, was it just you, or did you have at that point already a little team that came with you to?
It was a small team of 4 that came with me. We'd all been used to working at Future Publishing, which at the time probably had about 100 people working for it, which is relatively small, clearly. But on the other hand, it's significantly bigger than 4 people. So in the early days, you go, well, why is all this post building up? There's no one coming to collect the post and take the post away. Because in a bigger company, that happens. In our small company, we're going to have to go to the post office, aren't we? There were just hundreds and hundreds of things like that back then. 26 years is a long time in the technology of running a company.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's when you have to make your own cup of tea and clean it up.
I was going to say I still make my own cup of tea, but maybe some of the people from work will be watching and they'll quickly pip in and say, "I'm not very
So what were the biggest challenges in those early days of Flyer?
When I look back at it now, the first 2 or 3 years, we were really, really lucky. I mean, we were kind of pretty naive in terms of the stuff around running a company. So we'd publish the magazine, we'd send out some invoices, and people would occasionally pay, and it was we were just really lucky. We blundered our way through the first couple of years, learning. Every single week we'd figure something out, and every single week we'd find something else that was wrong that needed fixing. There's just so much stuff that, frankly, if we'd have decided to prepare for it properly, we'd have probably still been preparing now. But we worked. There was 4 of us, and we would generally get to work about 10 o'clock in the morning. We would generally leave the office at about 11 o'clock in the evening, and we did that for 6 days a week for about the first 2 years. So we just worked basically. We did.
And when you took over, I mean, I guess a lot of the revenue was at that time also was in advertising and classic magazine model.
Yeah.
Did you have challenges with advertisers or challenges with keeping your main clients engaged with the magazine?
Not hugely back at the time. I mean, Aviation's a really nice. Before Flyer magazine, I worked in the computer publishing market, and computer publishing at the time was really all about box shifters, ruthless people selling cheap PCs all over the place. And every week we'd have a complaint where a whole load of readers had bought PCs, and the company maybe never existed. And Aviation was actually an oasis. It was just really nice, genuinely nice, friendly people that we all shared a passion ultimately. and life is significantly easier when you share a passion. And it's very difficult to share a passion about shifting boxes of what were at the time, I don't know, 286 PCs of MS-DOS disks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, it was for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So as Flyer grew, like what was you came in and you said you could do something better with it. What was that? Did you achieve it in the first few years?
I don't know. I mean, I think any publisher always thinks they can do something better with the magazine permanently. You never really get to the point where you go, that's it, we've made it. You're always trying to do something better. And publishing was once described to me as the art of doing the best you possibly can in the time you've got with the resources you've got. Clearly, we could spend a year creating something, and then we'd still figure that we could do it better if we had 2 years. So you just do that. I mean, it's the cycle is quite fast as well, and after a while it becomes relentless. You know, that it's not a grind so much, but it's just a rhythm of life, and you're just, well, I don't know about everyone, but I'm always looking for ways to make it better, make the experience better, really. And
yeah,
you know,
are there bits of Flyer that now sort of run on autopilot? Like is the publishing cycle, are there bits of it that run on autopilot? Or is the publishing cycle, been smoothed out? Like, I mean, in 26 years, you can get a lot of kinks out of a system.
Yeah, you can, but all that happens is it's a bit like cycling. You know, you can train as much as you like. It still hurts. You're just going faster. And publishing is probably a little bit like flying a Robinson R22. You know, it's fine, but you don't want to take your hands off for too long, if at all.
If at all, yeah. And seek extra training before you jump in.
Yeah, you should definitely get some training. Yeah, we didn't. We kind of taught ourselves as we went along. We'd all worked in publishing for years, but working in publishing and running your own company are two different things, which we discovered quite quickly.
Yeah. Do you feel so when you were an employee, right? Then you were whatever the publisher, whatever that title was, and then do you in your role now as MD and as owner, do you feel like you're still in publishing, or are you now? Is it much more managerial, or like where's your focus?
No, I mean, for me, it's I wouldn't be doing it if it felt managerial. It's really about having a great team around you and about I mean, I do it because I love it. Frankly, I love publishing. I love media. I love aviation, and it's a passion, and that's why I do it. And I have some publisher friends who work in titles that are specialist titles, and they don't have a passion for those titles, and they have a completely different business. And in some ways, some of their businesses are more successful. But really, you need to have you need to have fun. You need to enjoy it. You need to believe in what you're creating.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's true. I've always said, some of you guys will know that I do some aircraft sales as the main gig, and it's hard when somebody comes and says, "Hey, can you sell X, Y, and Z airplane?" It's easier to sell something I believe in.
Yeah.
Right, and it gets me a little bit more inspired. And the airplane that I value is most often the airplane that gets sold first.
I mean, who wants to sell a nose wheel more?
The mechanic. Is there a joke coming?
And there's no joke coming. I don't know. It's a bit unfair. I find it was just an illustration of an airplane that's unique, shall we say? But there you go.
So something that I've always admired about at least the aviation magazines, the general aviation magazines in Europe, is how you guys do work together, right? Like you mentioned with Thomas in Flieger, you guys have a great partnership, and I mean, you guys even to some degree, you guys share content. Like, talk me through, how does that work? Because at the end of the day, the German speaker in aviation may also speak English. You're competing in a way, but also sharing content. Like, what's the structure there, and how does that work for you? And why did you do it?
frankly, we're not in hugely direct competition with Flieger magazine. I mean, we wouldn't share content with Pilot, for example. We share content with Aviation Pilote in France, and we've known all of them for a long time now. And it just makes sense. I mean, frankly, if you have an interesting aircraft to fly in the US, it doesn't make any sense for 3 magazines to go on 3 trips to the US. It makes sense to share that and move content around, really. And there's no real competition. I mean, there are some technical challenges, because German, by the time you've written something in German, or by the time it's been translated into German, it's generally 3 times longer than it is in English in terms of word or character count. So if someone sends you, here's a 5,000 word piece in German, and you get it translated, and all of a sudden you've got 32 words left, you've got an awful lot of space to fill. But
the German words are just longer.
Exactly. That's German words are longer. Yeah, that's exactly it.
We have on the topic of content, we have a question from Ian that basically saying there's a lot of articles cycle through the same parameters, ends up with platitudes that are manufacturer friendly. Can we have a bit more personality and genuine critique? I guess that's specific to aircraft, so to flight tests in general aviation magazines. And there's a bit of that. I have to agree. There's a few titles that do provide critique, but a lot of them are how amazing an airframe is. Do you have a response?
Yeah, I mean it's if you're it's a slightly complex area, but if you're to how can I put this? Some aircraft are very easy to put in a lot of personal observations and to be critical, and pretty much every airplane has got something wrong with it. But airplanes are compromises at the end of the day, and the designers are playing with compromises. No one's reinventing the laws of physics. It's really tough to make an airplane that's a STOL airplane, like a Kit Fox, for argument's sake, or a Husky, that's going to fly across country as fast as a Cirrus. It's tough. There are compromises and trade-offs, and you have to decide. The designer's decided which market he or she is designing the airplane for. So part of the job of looking at it, if you put someone who's an absolutely dedicated competition aerobatic pilot in a Cirrus SR-22, for argument's sake, or an A36 or something, they're going to go, it's not very aerobatic. The handling, it depends what you measure it against. You measure it against the purpose for which it has been designed. If it's a 2-seat sport aircraft that's been designed to teach people to get their sport pilot's license in the US, and it's frankly the handling's a little bit dull, you can say the handling's a little bit dull, but someone's designed that airplane to be safe for someone who's taking a reduced hour course. So, I mean, I try my hardest to put things in, and the last thing I wrote about the Porter, there was plenty of stuff I wrote in there that was not hugely complimentary. It's a characterful aeroplane,
right?
And
I remember about that. An airplane is fit to a mission, right? Yeah. And you can't write a review on every Cessna 172, PA-28, and expect them to be interesting.
That's really tough, and there aren't that many new aircraft. And I think I've had plenty of awkward conversations with people over the years. I remember, we got close to going to court with one helicopter manufacturer that's now been taken over some stuff that we wrote. I've had plenty of phone calls from people disagreeing with stuff that has been written about their aircraft. We do our best. We do our best.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think there's a role. I mean, if you're looking to buy an airplane, right? If you're looking at a critique of an airplane to buy versus you want to just be inspired by the allure of an airplane, I think those are two different articles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the market for aircraft, particularly new aircraft, is so tiny, even on a worldwide scale, that that you're almost better off an article, much as I'd love to think, I can fit into 3,000 words everything anyone ever needs to know about owning XYZ, but you can't do it. If you're in the market to buy an airplane, whether that's a £30,000 or a £300,000 or a £3 million airplane, £3 million, dollar, euro, whatever airplane, you really need to do your research and read around the subject, talk to people and find out, talk to engineers, talk to owners, talk to all sorts of people just to get the information. You can't rely on one pure little piece of insight, sadly.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I'm often coaching people through, their first purchase of an airplane, and whether or not they've contracted with me, to help them buy it or not. I always say you got to talk to other owners. You have to talk to the ownership groups, like the TBM OPA or the Piper's Owners Association or whatever they might be. Yeah. You have to talk to mechanics and you have to talk to the sales guys. You have to talk to the person who's crashed one, like as much exposure as you can, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful as well when you're talking to owners. Many owners, particularly recent owners, are very, very positive about the airplane that they've just spent a fortune buying, understandably. So owners either tend to be, this is like the best airplane. Anyone who's not got an AA5 is mad. This is best. It goes faster. It handles better. It lands shorter. It takes it. Or this is a piece of junk. I hate it. It's just cost me my house. And it's very, an owner's not a particularly good reference point in isolation, which is that whole thing about building up the picture from all sorts of different people, including magazines.
Yeah. Let's get back to Flyer. How has Flyer changed in 26 years? The magazine specifically.
How's the magazine changed? It's just a continual process of improvement. There's been, I think Flyer's had 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 editors in the 26 years. So each editor brings their own area of expertise, their own area of passion, their own area of skills. We're constantly trying to make sure we get better photography, better words, better design, that we're looking at things critically. In almost all cases where possible, we will not put something in Top Gear, the review section of the magazine, if we haven't actually flown it or flown with it, unless it's something that, like a G1000 or something that you'd need to have installed. And then even then we'd make that clear and we go and fly. So we try and build up a kind of relationship of trust with people that so that someone can read it. And if we do say, you know what, that's a bit dull, they can believe it's a bit dull. And we say, actually, this bit's really good, they can believe this bit's really. There's no future in saying an airplane's amazing if it's not amazing.
Right.
What's the point in that? You can go and read a manufacturer's brochure if that's what you want to read.
Yeah. What if you look at Flyer, if you pick up the Flyer that you have sitting behind you?
Yeah.
What is the must read? What is like your go-to section of Flyer? What's the go-to column that should not, like the first column you ever read when you're
personally? Yeah. Well, I'm the kind of person that'd say, yeah, you don't need to read my column. Read my column later. I love reading Matt Dearden. I love reading Mark Hales. Their columns are really, really, really good. Mark Hales is a really talented writer. I love reading Joe's safety stuff. I mean, the beauty of a magazine or any collection of content is really a kind of curated piece of content, isn't it? If you look out there with the whole, there is so much stuff out there that none of us have got enough time to consume it all. I mean, on YouTube there are, whatever it is, 58,000 hours loaded up every second. It's not quite that, but there's more YouTube than you can view. So publishers and media people, partly their job is to curate that content, to try and find the best content. So we'll go out and we'll look for those unique stories, those unique angles, those unique people. We'll interview those unique people with often in some of the old timer aircraft, you get a really great backstory of the airplane and the person as well. And it's not just about this particular airplane, it's about its birth and its restoration and everything else. And quite often they're so passionate. I mean, it's not unknown for people to spend 100, 200, 300, 400,000 pounds on an airplane that ultimately is worth 50, 60, 70 or 80,000 pounds. It's just become a kind of a joy for them.
Yeah. So on fire.
That worst day as well. Thank you.
Come again?
Sorry, someone's Kevin Northfield's commented TWD, that worst day, which is one of the and obviously the free landings. Yeah, we're the free landings.
Free landings too, but Biggin Hill's never included.
I have a word with Biggin. See what they've got to say. Persuade them. Yeah. The free landings is a really popular part of the magazine. Yeah, frankly, free landings should make buying the magazine a complete no-brainer, as they say in America. You know, you can save a huge amount of money. But
oh yeah, I mean, one of those coupons is your annual subscription.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and not just free; it's somewhere to go. That's very true as well.
Yeah, that's an excuse to go somewhere. So now you do events.
We did.
Well, yeah. Now you did events.
Yeah.
Soon again, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh no, we'll do them again, but clearly they're paused at the moment. So we do events we call them Pilot Careers Live. They've had a couple of different names over the years. We've been doing them for I think 18, 20 years now. And effectively, they're events for people who are interested in a commercial career. And our aim is quite simply for the people who come through the door to leave the event at the end of the day smarter and wiser than they were when they came in the morning. We're there to, I know it's a little bit, it's easy to yawn at a company's mission statement, as it were, but we really believe that our job is to inform and inspire. And that's what we take very seriously, whether it's a magazine or an event or anything we do, really.
Yeah. We were chatting earlier about how the event format for people looking and the talks that you organize there with people that are career pilots in the airlines or in other sectors of aviation, really to give a breadth to those students who are looking to join as a career. You said that was the best format for them. You said how you're constantly reevaluating formats for the content that you are curating.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting take. Like, how is that continuing to develop, maybe on the event side or even with the magazine?
On the event side, we do. I mean, depending on the phase that the market's in, then there are common questions that all students have. So, if I take last year, people go, should I do a modular course? Should I do an integrated course? Am I going to get a job? How am I going to pay for it? And those run through quite a lot of the events. So, but we are constantly monitoring the feedback that we get from seminars. We constantly survey people. We talk to people. If you come and see me at an event, most of the time you'll see me talking to visitors and asking them, okay, did you find out what you needed to know? Is there anything else you need to know? How could we do this better? Really, it's about giving people the right information, whether that's however that's done.
And what's next? Magazine, events, new YouTube channel you guys started.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly the times we live in at the moment are extraordinary, and they bring extraordinary challenges. Maybe 8 weeks ago, we had quite a big events business running 9 events throughout Europe. At the moment, that is very definitely paused until the world changes again. Digital is undoubtedly, and has been for a while, becoming increasingly important. I think the CEO walking over us. Can we fight back? Yes, Tony, we can. Sorry, I'm trying to look at 2 things at once here.
Yeah.
Where was I? Yeah, digital has been becoming increasingly important, probably over the last 10 years, and I think the rate of change will just accelerate and grow faster and faster. And I think people's way of consuming media is changing as well. YouTube, if you go back and you look at that very first YouTube video, whenever that was, of the YouTube's creator on a visit to a zoo, and they were paying people in the early days to upload videos just to get YouTube started. Now YouTube has kind of almost become the search engine where people go to to find out how to fix a washing machine or how to do anything. And so, as a content creator, we can't really afford to dismiss huge areas of where content is being consumed.
Yeah.
And where we think we can do a good job and bring something to the table or the screen, as it were.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I agree. Digital becomes more and more important.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Especially when we're in lockdown.
Well, yeah, I mean, and obviously we've seen all about pretty much any metric you care to mention in terms of digital. We've seen grow and spike massively at the moment, which is no surprise really.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all business.
We want to address the CAA question.
Yeah, so I think the CAA walking all over us. Can we fight back? Well, so the serious answer to that is yes, we obviously can. And are they walking all over us? Well, I think the trouble is we can't make massive generalizations about it. I mean, I know quite a few people in the CAA. I know one or two numpties. Most of the people in the CAA and most of the people at EASA on an individual level are doing the best job they possibly can, and most of them are doing it for the right reasons. They work within a system, and the system doesn't always give the right answer. And however, many of them are responsive and will change if they can within the framework that they have. So we can fight back, but in order to fight back and in order to get things changed, you have to do that in a kind of structured way, because it's very easy to sit on the side and throw bricks in. And I've done it myself a few times, but it doesn't always get you what you need to get. Sometimes you just need to sit there, work through the logical arguments, talk to people, and make sure that something does actually happen. But some of these things, I'm having I interviewed Rachel Gardner-Paul the other day, who's the head of the CAA's General Aviation Unit. And one of my kind of hobby horses is the appallingly complex documents that we get from the CAA. I've read the guidance about operating in the low-level route, the Manchester low-level route. I found that massively complex. And in fact, my last column, I complained about it being massively complex and ended up, after I'd spent a long time researching it, writing what I thought was a half-decent plain English guide about how to do it. The CAA should be doing that. If the information is important to communicate, it's important to communicate in a way that we can all understand it. I'm not a lawyer. I spend quite a lot of my time in aviation, but there's an awful lot of people who fly just for the pure fun of flying, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And to expect those people, when they're doing 24, 36, 50 hours a year, to be able to read a multi-page legally written document and understand it without, every page has probably got half a dozen references to other documents that you need to cross. It's a complete nightmare. Someone needs to just sit down and write a plain English guide.
There's no doubt about it. I watched a interview the other day with Lord Byron Davies, who was actually going to be our speaker at an event in person at the end of March that we had to cancel because of COVID-19. But he was asked if he understood the latest guidance from the CAA, and bearing in mind that first he's in the House of Lords, he's on the APPG. He used to work at the Department of Transport as the APP as a GA champion, and he's a lawyer that has a legal background. And he goes, no, after a couple of paragraphs, it went over the head.
It's tough stuff. It's really hard. So, it's a bugbear of mine. It's something that I complain about regularly, and it's something that I'll continue to complain about until hopefully it improves.
Yeah.
Hopefully it improves. I mean, but these things, you have to. It's no good. You have to keep at them. You have to keep driving gently, keep pushing, keep explaining.
Is there a regulator in Europe that communicates it well?
Let me just put my hand. Let me just add a vote of thanks, I suppose, to the CAA. I realise they do. It's not all good, but there's an awful lot of stuff at the CAA that we can do that we never used to be able to do. The whole self-declared medical thing in the UK. I mean, you can't imagine that 10 years ago. It's ridiculous. I can fill out a form on the internet and I can fly a permit aircraft, as an example, in the UK until I'm 70, and that's it. I never need another medical. I can, if I had any talent and ability, I could go and design and build my own single seat deregulated flying machine with a max all up weight of 300 kilos. I wouldn't even have to pass it past under anyone's nose. I mean, that stuff is okay. Most of it doesn't apply to all of us every day, but that stuff was unthinkable not that long ago. Lapple Medicals in the UK is one of the UK is one of the only places where you can get those done by your GP. Clearly, at the moment, that's not going to work so well, and they're a little bit busy with other stuff. But that's something that's happened in the UK that hasn't happened in lots of other places. So there are lots of wins. There are lots of good things. So you have to kind of. I'm not a fan of the sweeping generalizations.
No. I'm not either, and I think in my experience working with the CAA, actually, it's definitely a controversial view, but it's actually been rather pleasant. They've been helpful when I needed them to be helpful. I think where it's challenging, and this, if I'm reading into your criticism of it, it's actually in the way that they're communicating a new doctrine, or the way that they're communicating is sometimes really difficult to understand. Although the idea behind it is maybe correct. Yeah, I mean, it's some of the stuff they communicate could be communicated an awful lot better. Someone's just put the Skyway code was very good. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. Yeah. You need a Skyway code equivalent for every bit of GA communication out there. On the other hand, I can understand if there's a rush to get exemption out before the weekend so that people can apply. Maybe writing something, as I found out when I wrote the plain English guide to the low level route, writing something simple is not a quick process. It's actually harder to write something simple and in plain English than it is to write something complicated. Or it is for me anyway. So, but that's it. They should still do it. We still need to hold them to it. And I'll continue to do my best to hold them to it. And frankly, if they do something good, I'll happily praise them. If they do something that I think needs changing, I'll happily not praise them. As you have praised them. As I have, yeah. Your article was it's a while ago, but converting a national license to an EASA standard. Yeah. You had nothing but good things to say for the CA in that article. I remember it as a standout article. Yeah. Like, man, you're soft. Hey, there's a question about, and I'm just paraphrasing it, but what are the biggest risks to general aviation? So let's say maybe the top two, in your view, what are the top two biggest risks to general aviation in the UK? And what are the things that we can do as pilots and aviators in multiple facets of GA to support? The top two biggest risks are, number one, I can't count, so there's going to be more than two. Number one, it's access to airports. That's increasingly difficult, increasingly expensive, and they have restrictive opening hours. It's a pain in the backside. Number two is controlled airspace. I don't normally have a problem with controlled airspace as long as the access to that controlled airspace is staffed accordingly. I have a problem with controlled airspace if someone has some controlled airspace and doesn't staff with enough controllers, so you struggle to get in because there's just not enough people to provide the service. Number three, I think there's a long-term issue that we're going to need to deal with regarding fuel. Number four, getting back to the communication thing, it's a really complex area, and it's very easy if you don't fly for a while, and if you're not in aviation, if you're not completely ingrained in it, you kind of jump off that roundabout, and the roundabout speeds up and goes round, and then you kind of hesitantly put a foot back on, and it's very easy to fall out of flying if you don't fly over winter for a few months, and then you get back and you go, oh my god, this new, I've read something on a forum somewhere about a SERA exemption that's now changed, and I don't really, and that's a massive mountain to climb to go and understand that and feel at ease before you go flying. And if your flying is a quick 30-40 minute flight because you love the sensation of flying, you love being in the air, you love your kind of smiles per minute rather than smiles per mile, if you like, then the
the mountain of you don't want any of that. You want to just fly and you want to relax. And if you're flying in the open FIR, no, you don't want to worry about all those things. And to get to the point where you don't have to worry about all those things takes an increasing amount of work to understand and file it all away. And so the complexity, I think, it gradually just grinds you down. You know, something, oh my God, something else I've now got to understand. And oh, what? So Sarah's taken away the exemption, which means the VFR in the low-level route means that I've got to stay this far away from cloud, but then there's a special that's just way too complicated. And what people do is go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to go to Blackpool this weekend. It's too complicated. I'm going to go to the shopping centre with the family instead or something. And that's a shame. That's a shame. It should be simple. Keep it simple.
Yeah. And I guess, a simplified guidance from the CA is certainly part of that. Is there something that we can do to simplify the flying?
So I think there is. And now, because of the way the technology exists, it's much easier. If you as an instructor, when you're instructing, ideally you want someone to say, hey, Philippe, give me a briefing about operating from Biggin, for argument's sake. And instead, you could go, okay, well, let's sit down, let's get all the books out, and about 3 hours later, I would have explained it to you, and you would have understood that sub-clause 3 in the operating manual. Nobody
That's what I do, though, because I have to prove my value.
Yeah, exactly. And that'll be $50 for half an hour. Right? And more if you want me to wear that rubber suit. All you're doing is you're going, there's this whole big complex pile of stuff. This is what you need to know. We've got to keep it simple for people. And we can all help each other. We can all understand these things and brief each other on these things. And putting some, we got to help each other out on that stuff, basically, where we can.
Yeah, for sure.
Where we can.
We could talk about the CA and the challenges we face for a long time, but I don't want to go much more than an hour.
To do with customer input. No, they don't request my input. I'm just answering a question from Yogesh here. I do get a chance to engage with the CA. I'm quite lucky in as much as I've got a decent relationship with people at the CA. I mean, Andrew Haynes, who used to be the head of the CA, had quite a good relationship with Andrew Haynes, and occasionally I'd send him an email and go, Andrew, I'm afraid I'm about to write something which is really critical of your organisation because of A, B, C, or D. And he would come back to me and he'd go, no, you're absolutely right on A, B, and C. We got that wrong. You should say so. But I think you're wrong on D, and this is why you got it wrong. And you could engage and you could discuss. So I'm quite lucky. And the CA, I mean, they frankly, believe it or not, the CA and almost everyone at the CA goes into work with the intention of trying to get it right. Very few people go into work thinking, I'm going to screw some people's lives up today. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but most people want to do their best and want to do the right thing and do the right thing, and sometimes just need a little bit of help and encouragement along the way.
For sure. So I don't want to go too much over the hour.
No.
So moving on from the CAA.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'll be here until midnight.
2 aviation stories of when I screwed up.
That's what I want to know. How did you know that was my next question?
And learn some lessons.
This is an organic conversation, Ian.
That's a rubber suit. Organic. Sorry. So the first one I wanted to tell you about this. How I messed up. I went on a fly out with a whole load of friends of mine. There was probably 16, 17 aircraft, maybe even more than that, from France, largely. And we flew to a place called Longyearbyen, Spitsbergen, so halfway between the north of Norway and the North Pole. A good 400-500 miles over water crossing of the Barents Sea. Really cold, inhospitable place. Had to have the fuel shipped out there. So anyway, shipped all the fuel out there, got there, had a great time. It's an amazing, amazing place. If you get a chance to go there, even if it's not by GA, I can highly, highly recommend it. Just a completely out of this world place. We come to come the day to leave, and they have some bad weather being up there, as you can imagine. And the weather forecast was basically, if you don't get off the island or the archipelago today, you're probably going to be here for another few days while the bad weather goes through. So we were all keen to leave. And I had my 182, and I couldn't start the 182 for some reason. It's like, what's going on? And you know what it's like when you can't start an airplane and there's a whole load of other pilots. Everyone suddenly becomes an expert in how to start your airplane and gathers around it. So there was another 182 owner, and I'd kind of got a bit frustrated at this point, and another 182 owner, another French 182 owner, a good friend of mine, said, hey, this is what you need to do. I gave him the keys, going, off you go, fill your boots, if you can get it started. And we're all dressed up in sort of survival gear and the survival suit, getting hot, getting bothered, and looking at the time, going, we need to get off, we need to get off, we need to get off. So anyway, my friend, we'll call him Emmanuel, because that was his name, manages to overprime the 182. It turns out that he's got a 182, but it's a diesel 182. Anyway, he overprimed the 182, started it. There was a bit of blowback, and there was a bit of fire then coming out of the cowlings. So anyway, the fire was out, and that was fine. But before setting off over this 500 miles of oversea flight to Norway, I decided really I want to take the cowling off and at least have a look that nothing was damaged. So rolled it into the hangar there, took the cowling off, had a good look, and we were trying to figure out why it wouldn't start and checking the fuel and everything. Anyway, cut long story short, got it all out of the hangar, still freezing cold. Most of the aircraft had gone by now. The time was running out and going, oh, come on, I really need to get going. Got the airplane started, jumped in, took off, and climbing out, I probably got to 50 feet, and one of my friends who was still on the ground suddenly came on the radio and go, Ian, you're on fire, come back quickly, I'm scrambling the fire tenders. And I'm going, what? I'm sure you could be able to smell fire. If you know, I could smell smoke or something if I was burning, but I can't smell anything. It came over the radio, you're on fire. Okay, whatever. So I kind of did a low level short circuit to come back, all the while thinking, I'm really sure I'm not on fire because I'm not hot. I can't see anything, but you know, and I can see the fire engines rolling and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh.
Word, what's going on here? And I land and I taxi back into the apron, still thinking, is there a fire? There really isn't a fire. And as I taxied back into the apron, I realized exactly what had happened as I saw a whole load of fuel slosh off of the back wing. And basically, I'd been a complete and utter numpty in all of the panic and putting it in the hangar and putting it out of the hangar, and I'd left the fuel cap off. And as I took off, the fuel had siphoned out, and I've seen a video since then, and it looks like a trail of smoke coming from the airplane. It turns out it wasn't a trail of smoke, but luckily he did call me back, because if it had continued siphoning, I wouldn't have had enough fuel to get to Norway, although I think I would have seen the gauges coming down anyway. So we had to get some of the fuel that we'd already given to a miner on the island to go and get it out of the mine and put it back in the airplane, put the fuel caps on, take off. And when I got to my destination that night, which I think was Kirkenes, Emmanuel, he hadn't caused it, it was my fault. Emmanuel, who'd been involved in it, big French guy, smoking a cigar, he'd stayed behind at the airport to make sure I arrived, because I was the last one to arrive. I had the slowest airplane. There was PC-12s and TBMs and stuff like that, and Cirruses, and I had my little 182 go 110 knots to try and get the fuel to last a bit longer. And I landed, and this French guy, Emmanuel, and I've known him for a while, he sort of just came up to me, gave me the biggest bear hug and a big kiss on each cheek, because he was so relieved that I was alive and he didn't have my death on his conscience. So there you go. When you're in a rush, don't be in a rush to do your pre-flight. It's a really dumb thing to be in a rush to do your pre-flight. My pre-flights now are significantly better than they were at that time.
Oh, I bet.
That's the end of a story for you.
Guy. Yeah, that's a lesson for us, for sure.
There's another story I've learned that this one's much quicker. I was flying an airplane in the US for a flight test for the magazine. And I still don't really know what happened. We were coming down on final for a landing. It was a tail dragger, and I've flown plenty of tail draggers. I mean, I'm not like a sky god tail dragger pilot, but I've flown a bunch of tail draggers. Anyway, unusually for me, the approach was nailed. It was on rails. The speed was good. Everything was good. Came in, landed, chirp, chirp. It had sort of big Tundra tires on it, on a hard runway. And next thing I knew, it's on its nose. I have no idea what happened. It's on his nose. My glasses, my headset are on the windscreen. The props in a lot of bits of shattered stuff. And we go, no one was hurt. And we got out, and the airplane sat there on its nose, which is kind of like the most horrible feeling you could possibly imagine. Just horrible. And then he gets a phone call. The guy who was with me, the factory guy, and it turns out the phone call was from the owner. And this is the first time I thought the factory guy, it was one of his airplanes. Right? And it's the owner going, my ELT's just gone off. I've got a phone call. What's wrong? And I went, put it on his nose. So anyway, we put it back, and that was it. And then later on that night, we got a phone call from, or maybe it was the next day, I can't remember. So it turns out, believe it or not, that the owner had forgotten to send the check for his insurance. So we then had a messy situation whereby I'd flown this aeroplane with the chap who owned the factory, who built them, who'd borrowed it from one of his owners, one of his customers, as to use as a demo thing. His customer had forgotten to insure it, and so it turned out I'd managed to crash an uninsured aeroplane, which led to a little bit of a discussion, shall we say?
Oh no!
Yeah. So that was so I learned a lesson, which is check insurance.
Yeah, another good lesson. Oh geez.
Yeah, another good lesson. Yeah.
Oh, that's my nightmare.
So I ended up paying half of that.
Oh, that's my nightmare. I'm most nervous about having to play through insurance. The rules, like if I, inadvertently go through airspace or whatever the case might be, that's just pilot training. I might lose the license. But the insurance thing, that's real money.
Yeah. No, there was so now we're very clear about things like that. And whenever I fly an airplane in order to write something about it, it's a strange balance, because you want to fly the airplane as much as you possibly can, and all of the time, take off, landing, touch and go, stalls, right, whatever it is. But at the same time, on the one hand, you have something like, say, Cirrus or Piper, where you'll be flying with the factory pilot, and in Piper's case, it's quite often a factory test pilot, and they will be experienced in letting other people fly it, or be an instructor or something. When I flew the PC6, I flew that with a really experienced instructor who basically didn't touch the controls, and that was kind of perfect. But it was very clear that you are P1. I might be flying, but if you think I'm about to hot start your engine or spin your airplane in, you need to speak up and stop it happening. So it's a kind of interesting balance, and it gets more interesting when you have a private owner who's got this pride and joy that has spent £400,000 restoring his £50,000 aeroplane or something like that. That becomes quite challenging. And then I think probably the most a couple of years ago, I flew something called a Panther, a little single seat home built in the US.
Yeah,
that the pressure was really on there, because that was the only one that existed. That was his one airplane that he was taking to Sun and Fun and all the events to put on his stand. He sold a bunch of kits, but no one had finished the kit. So this was the one flying example. And so I think when I took off and landed in it, I was probably more nervous than he was, and he was pretty nervous.
That's pretty cool. I thought we'd end. Yeah, just at being the top of the hour. I thought we'd end with something a little bit fun. A rapid series of questions.
Okay.
We should be able to answer each of them with one or two words. I'm going to try to go quick through it. Yeah?
Go for it.
All right, so we're going to start.
Are there prizes?
Come again?
Are there prizes?
Yeah, there's a prize.
Excellent.
A round of applause you'll only hear me, but there'll be a bunch of people giving you a round of applause.
Okay.
All right, so First question is, how many different types have you flown?
No idea.
All right.
100, 150, 160 maybe.
How many?
150 or 160.
That's pretty good. Favorite piston of all time?
Can you limit that at all?
Nope. For the allure and the mystique of flying.
I think it's probably this.
Do you have a picture of it?
I got a picture of it. Yeah. Lockheed 12A Electra, little baby Electra. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous flying airplane and beautiful, beautiful restoration.
All right. Favorite turbine?
PC6 because I flew it not that long ago.
That counts. Biggest plane you've ever flown?
Biggest I've ever flown.
Max takeoff weight, biggest.
Wow. That's that weight and balance stuff. I don't do that.
Most seats then.
And the N2.
That's big.
Oh no, actually, well, yeah. Biggest is the Catalina.
Catalina, okay. Preferred airline?
I don't have a preferred airline. I'm trapped in the BA customer loyalty scheme.
Favorite UK airport?
The Strip where I'm based in Wiltshire.
All right. The best GA accessible long weekend destination?
If you got an airplane fast enough, then Cannes, La Rochelle, Isle of Mull.
All good options. Favorite country to fly in?
Oh, that's really tough. I mean, the US does aviation, general aviation, better than anywhere in the world. Its main problem is you could fly across the US and just the aviation would be stunning, but wherever you land, you're going to have strip malls and McDonald's and stuff like that. When you're flying in Europe, you can land it. Each hour takes you to a different country, different culture, different restaurants, different food, different scenery.
That's good. Your best aviation memory?
I was flying a Mousquetaire in the French Alps on skis with getting some instruction on a perfect day, and we landed on a glacier. And the instructor got out and said, "Now go and do 3 solo circuits." Three solo circuits on skis on a Mousquetaire in a glacier in France was just good. But I've been really, really lucky. I quite a while ago now. We were doing a story on naval transit helicopter pilots, and I got to land a Lynx on the back of a ship, which was quite funky.
That's cool
as well. And really, really scary.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. But I mean,
That's a rapid round. That's a rapid round complete. No more on the spot questions.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to thank you very much for your time.
Hey, it's a pleasure.
I got you so what we do for those guys who've never been to a live event, it's normally not interactive, right? You'll see that I'm not a very good question asker. Normally, it's more presentation from our speaker, and I just kind of get out of the way, and you guys ask your questions, and it's all hunky dory. But there's always a little something for our speaker at the end. And so, Ian, you were our speaker tonight, and we're all really grateful that you took the time. So I got you a book, 81 Lessons from the Sky.
That is perfect.
Which at some point, you'll get it.
I look forward to that. And there are.
Or you want to just give me your address now, and I'll mail it. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just having a quick flick through here to see if there are any questions that have come up. That if you fly low over an airfield but don't land, can you have an MOR awarded for low flying too? Probably, yeah. Yes, it's divided in Congo. Think of City Airport. I have to click on that. I'm rubbish at speed reading backwards, I'm afraid.
That's all right. I think we covered off most of it.
I'll tell you what, anyone's got any questions, then feel free to send me an email. It's ics@seager.aero, India Charlie Sierra @Seager, Sierra Echo Alpha Golf Echo Romeo.aero, Alpha Echo Romeo Oscar. I'll happily have a go at answering it if I can, which I'll probably, but I'll give it a go.
That's a lot of phonetic letters. You can also write to info@londonflyingclub.com and I'll forward it.
Yeah, or just look me up somewhere. I'll be on Twitter or on the Flyer forums or somewhere. It's not that difficult.
Yeah. So thank you. Thanks, guys, for joining. Hope you guys enjoyed it and taking the time. And I am still working on a speaker for next week, perhaps. Maybe somebody who we can wake up in the middle of the night. We'll find out. If you have anybody who's interesting, who you think would be interesting to talk to the London Flying Club, then do get in touch. I'm always looking for speakers. So thanks again, Ian.
It's a pleasure.
Stay safe. Don't forget, cough into your elbows.
Everyone who's come along and asked questions. Much appreciated.
Enjoy the rest of your evenings.
I will do. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.